Welcome, everyone, to this edition of our ongoing webinar series sponsored by the Committee on the Present Danger China, aimed at exploring the threat the Chinese Communist Party poses to this country and to freedom more generally, and the help it is getting from its old friends here in the United States and other captured elites, as the Chinese call them. We're going to address today a prime example of this phenomenon, the extent to which the Chinese Communist Party has benefited enormously from help from those on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley who have been enabling not only China to prosper and compete economically with us, but to build arguably with the greatest rapidity in history, a first world superpower military, capable, it seems the Chinese believe now, of engaging in not just the pre-kinetic, unrestricted warfare of the past, but a shooting war against the United States. We're going to be exploring all of that with a very distinguished panel against the backdrop of an executive order issued by President Biden last week. It is numbered 14105, and its purported purpose and professed object in the publications and publicity that has surrounded it is to constrain the investment Americans might otherwise make in three specific militarily relevant categories: semiconductors, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence. The question before us today is, does this mark a real and long overdue course correction with respect to the help that we have been providing the Chinese in mastering not only these technologies, many others that directly relate to the Chinese Communist Party's military ambitions, as well as their global competitiveness economically? And to the extent that this amounts to much less than meets the eye, is it an indication of the Biden administration's actual intent to continue to otherwise help and empower our mortal enemy, the Chinese Communist Party? And we have some breaking news that may bear on all of this in terms of further evidence of real difficulty in the Chinese economy and the Chinese Communist Party's response to such difficulties. And we'll talk about that in the course of the program as well. Starting with one of our very important allies in all of this effort, a man who has been from the inception of the Committee on the Present Danger China an inspiration and a real leading force for some of its work in the space of financial warfare, especially related to what the Chinese Communist Party has done with the help of their friends on Wall Street to underwrite, by some estimates, to the tune of $3 to $6 trillion in American investors, most of whom are unwitting, in Chinese Communist Party entities, including those directly supporting the Chinese Communist Party's People's Liberation Army. His name is Roger Robinson. He has held a host of important and highly consequential positions. His distinguished career as a vice president of Chase Manhattan Bank, as a senior director for international economic affairs in the Reagan National Security Council, as the chairman, as well as the ranking member at various points of the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, and not least as the founder and president of RWR Advisory, as well as chairman of the Prague Security Studies Institute. We're always very, very appreciative of his time and delighted that he was able to join us for this particular occasion, fresh from some very important testimony that he gave before the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party in the House of Representatives back in May, and most recently a very important interview with Maria Bartiromo last Friday, in which he talked about this executive order, and we've asked him to reprise some of those comments here. Roger, welcome once again, and thank you for taking the time to join us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Frank. As I mentioned in the interview with Maria, when she asked me the short form characterization of the executive order, my response was something along the lines of pathetically narrow and diluted beyond recognition. As you know, there were months where this executive order was missing in action. And during that time, you can be sure it was systematically whittled away of any real teeth along the trail by industry, the formidable Chinese Communist Party lobby in the US, the China lobby, as well as the Wall Street crowd. And I'm sure others, but the point is that when it ultimately emerged, instead of treating the vast landscape of militarily relevant American technology that requires what the administration described as high walls, they opted for a perhaps a modestly sized backyard. That is to say, 3 subject matter: quantum computing, advanced chips, and AI, but nevertheless, it puts aside, as I say, a vast territory that should properly have been covered. And it's now a 1-year hiatus for that even to be implemented, and perhaps, again, whittled away even more. And of course, the fact that it was done in such a way as to not at all take on the U.S. capital markets, where, as Frank indicated, hundreds of billions of dollars are being funneled from the investment portfolios of some 100 million Americans, courtesy of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and their index providers, into the coffers of the Chinese Communist Party through 5,000 proxy companies, that is, Chinese communist-controlled enterprises that are throughout the U.S. investment portfolios of the American people, and who are helping fund a number of the high-tech enterprises that we're professing to be, and are, I hope, so concerned about. So here you are supposed to be in the business of restricting these sophisticated military sectors, strategic sectors of the Chinese economy, while funding them very handsomely through the unwitting investments of the American people simultaneously. And then having the temerity to put Treasury and Commerce in charge of implementation of the EO, the executive order, which, as we know, are peopled at the top by Wall Street executives that have been through the revolving door, just as is the case at the SEC, the National Economic Council. I'm disappointed to say the Commerce Department seemingly as well, but Treasury is the real bastion of Wall Street. And so the notion that we're entrusting our technology security and our financial security to folks that have a long time vested interest in going just the other way is fanciful. And why President Reagan, who understood this very well, wouldn't let those economic and financial agencies of government near anything remotely to do with the economic and financial activities of the Soviet Union. He properly put the National Security Council staff in charge because he understood full well he's not going to get an honest set of answers or actions on the part of certain of these agencies. And that's just sadly the way they're structured, and we've got to do something about it one day. But this is the kind of thing we're facing. And as Frank mentioned, we now have the Chinese economy increasingly in extremis. Their markets are falling precipitously. One merely needs to pick up the paper today, and every major paper is covering these subjects. And extraordinarily, they just issued a directive out of the Chinese Communist Party to Chinese domestic fund managers along the lines of no net sales next week of our company stocks, meaning you can sell what you may have bought a few days ago or whatever, but not a yuan more. That is to say, you can't be selling Chinese stocks right now for fear of stimulating a broader sell-off. And you can be sure that that's not even a subliminal message to the big players in the United States and elsewhere that are holding on an unduly heavily weighted basis Chinese stocks in their investment products, such as BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and others. So it's extraordinary to see this heavy-handed, almost mafioso style directive at the markets, knowing full well that it would telegraph to its other friends in Wall Street and elsewhere to basically do the same. This is the kind of manipulation we need to be very concerned about, because it portends the notion that the fiduciary well-being of the American people is being strong-armed right now. You know, if we need to be dumping out of Chinese stocks because they're going to hell in a handbasket, that's what we should be doing. We need to protect the American people, not the Chinese Communist Party, from this not so slow motion economic and financial implosion that's currently underway. So there's a lot more to observe along the trail, but I think that in the shortness of time, perhaps I should leave it there. And Frank, if you've got another item or two that I might speak to, I'm happy to try.
Roger, thank you. Let me just, out of order, if I may, ask you to just tease out a little bit further the point that you made at the very end there, Raj. We're talking about American firms, BlackRock and MSCI in particular, that are now under investigation by the House Select Committee that you testified before in connection with the incredible support that they have been providing the Chinese Communist Party through, again, the investment not of their money, but that of, well, people like our audience, I'm sure, and many, many other Americans as well. When the Chinese, and you used a term that I'm very fond of, mafioso, in our book, The Indictment, prosecuting the Chinese Communist Party and friends for crimes against America, China, and the world. One of the central points we make is, and by the way, this book was really derived from many of these webinars that we've done, all of which are available for free here at presentdangerchina.org. But we talked, Roger, about the Chinese Communist Party really being, properly understood, a transnational criminal organization. And the effect of not only signaling to their own, markets, but also to international markets, including, of course, most importantly, ours, lay off of selling our products, our corporate stocks and bonds. That has a certain, it seems to me, offer you can't refuse kind of quality to it, doesn't it? And if you could just give us a little bit of a flavor of what it actually means legally in terms of what these entities in the United States are doing with and to their clients as a result.
Sadly, China has received a free lunch program from a regulatory and legal perspective in the United States for about 25 years. And we performed no diligence on the Chinese companies that came into our markets. We didn't even check to see, in the case of the Wall Street players, whether they were sanctioned entities or egregious national security and human rights corporate abuse. We've had all manner of Chinese companies enter our markets. I could go through the list of very troubling developments and malign activities they're associated with, but it would take the balance of this webinar to get through. Leave it to say that the attitude of Wall Street is, if it's not illegal, we're doing it. That's why you see Chinese companies in the Federal Thrift Savings Plan. That's why you see the portfolios of the American people littered with sanctioned and other Chinese bad actors. So the sad part is, Frank, that it's not illegal. I think that there's going to be a systematic effort on the part of the House Select Committee and others in Congress, like the Marco Rubios, and that have stood tall on this issue, and they're going to seek to make them illegal one by one. In the meantime, what's new in this investigation of BlackRock MSCI, and I think probably to expand to Vanguard and FTSE Russell, for example, that also have gone down this very dangerous path of the wrong sorts of Chinese on a mass basis brought into their investment products. We're going to start to see real concern over their corporate reputations and brands. They can be calloused on the legal side and basically tell us to pound sand, as it were, but it's going to hurt their corporate reputations and brands as the word spreads and is understood as to what's underway here. The money has really never seen the light of day until now. It can never lose our scrutiny again, and it is fundamental to the Chinese Communist Party remaining a going concern. Indeed, without the U.S. capital markets, which are roughly the size of the rest of the world's combined, the 60+% of the world's liquidity and investable capital that we represent, not to mention the world's reserve currency, there would not be a Chinese Communist Party that can remain a going concern. So this is a linchpin issue. And Frank, I think it's maturing. And I think that we're gradually at, if not over, the tipping point where the free lunch is finally going to start to come to a close.
Roger, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us and taking the question, despite what I know is a very, very busy schedule at the moment.